This is Lady Cara Tarot, and today we've gathered here to stage an intervention. I know, you've tried on your own, but now we need to do this together. I'm talking, of course, about the topic that several of my online friends have been talking about, which is either a no buy or a low buy in 2026. And I'm calling this hashtag, my notes are over here, hashtag declutter and no buy, but also hashtag stop buying, start reading tarot. I got that title from BookTube, where somebody was talking stop buying and start reading. And that particular one was so influential for me. And I thought that the pointers were so relevant to tarot that I thought I would share them with you. And as well as I watch an incredible amount of decluttering because I know with the situation as a caregiver that the time is coming upon me when decluttering is going to be essential. I'm living in the house of these are the things your grandkids don't want, and because I'm living in my parents' home. And so we've done decluttering before, but there are still many things that it wouldn't even occur to my mother to let go of until after she's gone. So, and you know, it's not my job to make her miserable. I want her to see the things that she loves around her. That's why she's at home. Anyway, so I'll start with some of the pointers from Stop Buying, Start Reading. Back up just a moment. You need to know that this is coming from the gal that just 2 hours ago hit the button on a deck that is one of my, white elephant decks. I can't remember what they're called. One of those decks that you thought you would never be able to find. And I found it for roughly Kickstarter price on eBay used. And it is the large Cloisters Tarot. I've been seeing a lot. It's been pretty easy to find the small version, but the large version rarely comes up. And this looked to be in very good condition. So cross your fingers with me that this is going to be the correct thing when it arrives. But then also last week, Etsy had a sale. So Etsy had an additional 20% on anything else, and I had already gotten a percentage off from the creators. So, I clicked the button then. So, I'm speaking to myself here. And actually, there is a theory that anyone who does like blogs or anything like that, that they call it the audience of one, that the main person that anybody online is actually talking to is themselves, and what they need to hear and what's on their mind. I actually believe that about preachers too. Having worked in the church, I believe that most pastors preach about the thing that's bothering them that week. And if it speaks to someone else, that's coincidental. So anyway, let's start. So the Stop Buying, Start Reading books points were, number 1, make the commitment to stop buying. Now, I did this with a friend 2 months ago, and neither one of us were super hardcore about it. But it does help to just connect with somebody and say, I'm really trying to cut back. Cutting back will not be hard for me, considering this past year I purchased at least 100 decks. So cutting back would not be hard for me. But the commitment is, the phrase is, make a commitment to stop buying if you have sufficient. Well, only you can say what sufficient is. and sufficient for somebody who is an intentional collector, who is trying to build a collection that has everything in it. Sufficient for that person would be very different from the person who is somebody who just reads and wants to know each deck incredibly well so that they can get really in-depth readings with decks that they feel really secure about. And, and there are all these other, ephemera as to what is sufficient, but you get to say what's sufficient. That's the great thing. You get to say what's sufficient for you. Okay. That's assuming you don't have a spouse who's telling you have to curtail your spending. I won't be able to get into that. So, number 2, keep a list. I do keep a list. I've kind of fallen off, but I do keep a list. And your list should have what you have, and then I have a spreadsheet because I'm a Virgo, and it has a whole bunch of other minutiae about each deck. Also, mine includes the price that I bought it for and the going price, the typical market value. Because, and I could do a whole nother video about collecting. In the collecting world, most of the time, once the wrapper is taken off, whatever you buy is 50% depreciated. That's normal for most collectibles. So that's just something to know. It doesn't necessarily seem to be the same in tarot land because, and then of course, if something is out of print, that changes that. But in general, once you take the wrapper off, 50% less. You can no longer say it's brand new. Even if you've never touched it, it's 50% less value. And B, the other thing that I keep on my list is a wish list. Now, what the BookTube suggests is read 5 of those books before you allow yourself to buy a new one. So if we translate that to tarot, let's say work with 5 of those decks before you allow yourself to get a new one. For one thing, you find out if you really like all 5 of those decks. And that gets to something we talk about later about decluttering. And we're not talking about, oh, I used it for one day. I used that for one day. Use that. Five decks, 5 days. I've used them. No. We're talking about the same amount of time you would invest at least in reading a book, reading the guidebook, getting to know the deck, using 5 before you bring one in. Well, that hasn't been my standard. So we have number 1, commitment. Number 2, list. A physical list does help. 3, presence. Switching your focus to what you're working with now and what you want to work with now, as opposed to what you hope to work with one day. And of course, this was about books, so it was focus on what you're reading now, not about the next book you think you might want to read one day. And that helps bring you back in to whatever it is that you're working with. Number 4, intention. No, this is number, my numbers got off. Yeah, number 4, intention. And this goes back to, I have a weekly schedule for my decks to kind of in a rotation. But if I say, I've worked with it because I worked with it one week, we all know that's not really working very much with a deck. That's not even really getting to know a deck very well. It might be enough to know you dislike a deck, but so it's not a rush, and it's like it's one thing to work with a deck to just start to familiarize yourself with it. It's another thing to work with a deck in a way that you really feel that you've unlocked its secrets. Both are okay. And usually I think most of us have decks in both of those areas. But the point is just to have an intention. The next is you know I don't like this one. Keeping a book, journaling. As I said, I'm a writer, but I don't like journaling. But I do. I do with tarot, and it has come in more useful for me with tarot. And for tarot, I just want to make sure my battery isn't running down on this. They say for BookTube, it's keep a list of quotes and word definitions. And for me, it is kind of similar. It's quotes and phrases in the guidebook that particularly speak to me. For example, last week, I came across a quote in one guidebook. The Cult of Weimar Tarot usually has something really interesting for almost at least every other card. And for the Hierophant, it was, authority requires mutual respect, which I thought was a wonderful thing to remember for the Hierophant, but it's also particularly relevant in our world today. Number 6, so number 5 was journaling. Number 6, slow down. And that means even slowing down on getting rid of things, so that's a good thing. But slow down, and this goes back to presence and taking your time with something, and that you don't want to just rush through and say, oh, I know it, and you know, I know that one, I can work with that later, I'm on to the next one. It's about savoring, and I think that's a wonderful concept. But also it's like, don't rush to get rid of things, because we all know that there are some decks that you think you dislike initially, and then you see it again on somebody else's video, and then you see it again on somebody, like, oh, I don't think I gave that enough attention to really be aware of how important that might be to me, how much I might like that. And you can, if you rush to get rid of things because you have a knee-jerk, I don't like it, then you know, you hear about people saying, I got rid of it too fast and then I wanted it back. And it happens. It happens. So to be aware of that. And also, when you get to the point, now decluttering things, don't get rid of it too fast. You have to think about, there was something that made you want it in the first place. Try to at least mentally reconnect with that and think, is that still there? Was your assumption about the deck wrong? If it was, that can be kind of a deal breaker. I'm back. I had to shift my computer a little bit. So I think, number one, I think we can all agree that the goal is to value what we have, whether we only want 1 deck, 10 deck, 40 decks, 70 decks, 200 decks, valuing what we have. If you're a hardcore collector and collecting itself is the goal, it could be 2,000. You know, that's neither here nor there. The point is that you value it for whatever it is. Now, a lot of the old decluttering videos would say, ask yourself if I need it. Well, you and I both know we can talk ourselves into any deck that strikes our fancy. Putting it on a wish list, as I mentioned before, can slow that process down. I have definitely put things on a wish list that a month later I realized, oh, I don't want that. It doesn't, you know, it was a spur of the moment. I was caught up in the excitement of somebody else that liked it, but I looked at it again on my own, and I don't need it, and I took it off the wish list. So the wish list can help with that momentary jazz, but asking yourself, do I need it, is not really effective. We are marvelously able to talk ourselves into things that we don't need. I certainly am. What you should ask yourself is, would I buy it again today? Knowing what I know, having what I have, not even just about that deck, have I used it or not, but knowing my collection, knowing what I have, knowing what I want to be using, would I buy it again today? Now, up here, probably, I'm going to insert some footage of my downstairs bookcase where I keep most of my collector decks and, limited edition decks and my RWS decks. And you'll see that there are some red tags on some of those. I just went through this afternoon and I marked the ones I would not buy again today. That may not be enough to get rid of them, but it's a really tangible thing to think about. Would I buy that deck again today? I think you can ask yourself, did I buy it because it was on sale? Did I really buy it only because it was on sale? And that you thought, oh, $10, how could I go wrong with $10? Well, and now it's something that you're not particularly interested in. It's taking up space in your storage. We all have limited storage, whatever that means for us. We have a finite amount of space, or we have it shoved away somewhere that we've forgotten that we have it, and we're not even interested in it. I have them. You probably do too. Then another question. When there's the jazz and excitement of seeing it and learning about it and getting it. Was it disappointing? That's the third question. Was it disappointing when you got it? Was it what you'd hoped it would be? I can think of a really popular deck now that when I got it, I was disappointed because it didn't match the oracle that I loved so much, but the whole tone of the tarot deck was different. I think you know which one I'm talking about. And for a lot of people, it didn't matter. They still loved that deck. For me, it was a deal breaker. I didn't want that kind of a deck. And it wasn't an expensive deck. They're harder to get rid of. Let's get real. The inexpensive decks are harder to get rid of. Number 3, is there something you actively dislike about the deck? And one of the ways that I go through that is, I did this with the golden RWS tarot. Now, I know a lot of people love it, and that's great. I thought I would love it. But then every time I used it, I just felt, I don't dislike the bling. I love the nod to Alphonse Mucha's artwork and that whole Art Nouveau vibe. I decided to go through the deck one by one and decide and just do a knee-jerk response. Do I like the card? Do I dislike the card? Or am I just about it? Am I just neutral about it? And I ended up with 40 cards that I disliked. And so that's my answer. Why hold on to a deck when you have 40 cards that you dislike? I think every deck, no matter how much you love it, has one or two that you think, oh, that one doesn't hit right for me. That can be an interpretational difference or something about the artwork that's jarring. But if it's 40, that's half the deck. That's not, as far as I'm concerned, that's not workable. I mean, if you're a person who only has 2 decks and you really want that deck, okay, these are my goals. So that one by one. Now, if it isn't that great, if there are 10 that you actively dislike, you still have to weigh, do you dislike them enough that it's going to keep you from using that deck? And that's active dislike is, for me, with the number of decks that I have, I feel like I don't want to keep one deck that I actively dislike. Am I going to get rid of it immediately? No, for the reasons I stated before, where sometimes it's just the mood you're in, the day you look at it. I do give things a cursory work through. I play solitaire with them. I do all of these things. I do deck interviews. Um, a deck that I was unsure about, I did a deck interview with last night. It introduced itself to me as the Five of Swords, and it said that its baseline is a Seven of Swords. And I said, goodbye. It identified me correctly. In a deck interview, I always look for the deck to identify me correctly, and in a way that I see myself, and it did. And it said that I was at odds with the deck itself. And, you know, that's what the reading said. And I said, psh, I don't need any more. I didn't like you that much in the first place. And so that was a deck where the imagery just didn't sit right with me. Other people love it. And I mean, other, you know, big channels love it. But for me, there were several things about the artwork that didn't sit right with me for what I thought was essential to the suits. And now we get to something that I've discussed with us at Tarot for Tired People. You do not have to sit with or work through a deck that you don't like. Is there value? If you have a deck that you really like and there's one card that you find jarring or disturbing, is there a value in exploring that? Yes. Yes, of course. But if you have a deck that you really dislike, that you disagree with the way that the suit is portrayed, if you dislike 40% of the cards in the deck, you bought it for a reason. You bought it to use it. That's like saying that you have to wear shoes that hurt your feet just because you bought them. And you have to work your way through, and I am actually working my way through a pair of shoes that's uncomfortable. Okay. I better take that to heart. But it's like, or wearing clothes that don't fit you just because they were given to you as a gift. No, we are under no obligation just because we bought a deck, or even if we were given. It's harder if you're given the deck. But if you bought a deck, you're under no obligation to sit with it or work through it and torture yourself because you made a bad purchase. So I just think that's important to recognize, because that's kind of out there like, oh, that means that's your shadow. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's just something you don't vibe with, and you're never going to vibe with, because I think part of the point of getting our collection is to have, however wide-ranging, a group of decks that we feel connected to and that we want to work with. And this is my last question, and this is the Marie Kondo question. Does it spark joy? I can tell you that when I went through looking for decks that would I buy it again, the majority of those decks do not have red flags. And the majority of those decks, I was like, oh, I love that. Oh, yes, that. Oh, I'm so glad I have that. Oh, yeah, I really enjoy working with that. If we can get our collection or our working decks down to decks that we only feel that way about, we're still going to have some decks that we work with more and some we work with less. But just imagine, I mean, for me, that's the goal. I want to have every deck that I have in the house. I want to have this, oh, good, I can't wait to work with this deck. I want to have that feeling again. And so that for me is the whole purpose of a declutter and, you know, slow down and no buy, as I want to get to know these deck friends better and on a deeper level. It's quite possible that in doing that, I will discover, oh, I don't really enjoy this deck as much as I thought I did at one time. And that's okay too. And then, I mean, some people have like a purgatory area. I think the problem with a purgatory area, now I'm on the side of trying to simplify. So that's where I am overall. And not just my decks, but with everything. I want to pare down to the things that I really want to have, because I will most likely be moving to a much smaller place. So I have the things I have to have, and then the things that I want to have. And my tarot collection is one of those. But as I said, I want it to be a collection that I love every deck. And the thing about having a purgatory area is out of sight, out of mind. You can buy it again by mistake, unless you have a list. Or you can think you're going to come back to it, but it sits there for years and you never use it. So I think it's fine to have a small purgatory area for me. This is all from, these are my standards. Like a small purgatory area, but out where I can see it and I can remind myself, oh, I haven't worked with that deck yet and I want to get to it. Because if you're like me, the only way I know for sure that a deck and I are really working together well is by working with it. So if it sits in a box somewhere in the garage, that's a deck that's not being used, and it's a deck that I'm going to forget about. And even if you say, oh, well, I'm going to revisit that every so often or trade out. I mean, some people do that. Some people do spring and summer and fall and winter decks. And, that's, if that's the way you're doing it, then that works for you. And that's the big thing is, I think we have to be, when we're decluttering, when we're doing no buys, we have to be scrupulously honest with ourselves about what's going to work for us the best to arrive at that place where everything we have is something we're really glad that we have. And then even if you don't work with it as much, you're still really glad that you have it, so that when you do turn to it, it's something you want. Well, those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear if you have tips or techniques that help you streamline, that help you declutter, that help you clarify. And then if you have things that help you clarify how you feel about a deck, like my example of flipping through the deck and looking at each card. I think we've all had decks where you've, even a deck that's a good deck for you will have periods of time when it just gives you gobbledygook. And I do think there are a variety of reasons for that. It's you need to be working with something else right then. The deck needs to be cleared. A lot of people would say different things, but I don't think that's necessarily an indicator. I'd say I've also had decks that I work with that I just feel negatively about. And I can think of one right now that I did not put a red tag on, and I thought about it half an hour later. I thought, why didn't I put a red tag on that deck? But I think that's because I worked through some of that stuff with that deck before and realized it's staying for now. But I knew that when I asked myself why. Anyway, this is getting into ramble territory. I hope this is useful. I hope taking these ideas both from BookTube, reducing your library, and from Simplify and Declutter and Live Simply videos. I have, in my dream world, I live in an austere. Did you ever see the episode of Ab Fab where she went to Miranda Richardson's apartment and it was all white with one piece of art, and they didn't even have anything to put the bottle of wine down on. It's like somewhere in my dream world, that's the way I live, but that's not the way I live. I live like The gamekeeper's cottage. That's the way I live. Animals in and out, and so, some of it's just being able to laugh at your own dreams sometimes, your own vision of how you'd like to live as opposed to how you really do live, and knowing that, and still coming to terms with that. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. I hope these pointers help you. If you have pointers that you use or things that you do to kind of determine is the deck on or out, I'd love it if you shared those with me, either by doing your own video with a hashtag, or because that would be a great expanded conversation if other people took up this hashtag and gave their pointers on, number one, how do you approach just the process of streamlining, and then, or declutter, not buying. How do you approach the process of not buying? And then how do you approach the process of using what you have and making determinations about the things you're going to let go of? I know other people have done these before. I'm adding to the conversation here, and either in the comments below or with your own video, I would love to hear some of your ideas and things that have worked for you in this regard. This is Lady Cara Tarot. Thank you so much. And be strong. Be strong in your no-buy. And if you can't be strong, get something you really want.